This week on Vaticano, Pope Francis hosts the leaders of the 27 European Union nations on the 60th anniversary of the Treaties of Rome. The Holy Father invites them to rediscover the spirit of family, in which every member is welcomed and respected. We accompany Pope Francis on a pastoral visit to the city of Milan, where more than 1 million people welcome him with open arms. Stay with us to learn more about the first bishop of ancient Gaul and the Paleo-Christian art and culture of France. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. Before the Angelus prayer on the fourth Sunday of Lent on March the 26th, Pope Francis explained a passage from the Gospel of John. The fragment from the Holy Scripture tells us how Jesus restores the sight of a blind man.
He was blind from birth. With this miracle, Jesus reveals himself and reveals to us himself as light of the world. And the person blind from birth represents all of us, who were created to know God, but because of sin, we are like the blind person. We need a new light. We all need a new light, the light of faith that Jesus has given us.
The Holy Father reminded the faithful that the sacrament of baptism is the first manifestation of the faith. He invited the pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square to reflect on the significance of the faith in their lives.
If I asked you now, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Do you believe that He can change your heart? Do you believe that He can make us see reality the way He sees it and not the way we see it? Do you believe that He is light, the giver of real light? What would you answer? Everybody answer in his or her heart.
Pope Francis went on to say that in order for us to see this real light of Christ, it's important first to forsake other false lights. The lights that come from sin, from unfair judgment, and from selfish relationships. On the morning of Friday, March the 24th, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, received in audience the President of the Republic of Fiji, His Excellency Mr. George Conrod. During their cordial discussions, the two leaders emphasized the existing good relations between the Holy See and Fiji. President Conrad thanked the Holy Father for the contribution of the Catholic Church to the life of the country. The discussion then turned to the issue of climate change and its ethical dimension. The Republic of Fiji is an archipelago of more than 330 islands with a population of around 900,000 people. In February of last year, Fiji was hit with the full force of Cyclone Winston. The cyclone destroyed tens of thousands of homes across the islands. On Thursday, March the 23rd, Pope Francis received in private audience His Excellency Mr. Paul Biya, the President of the Republic of Cameroon. During the meeting, the President of Cameroon emphasized the important contribution that the Catholic Church offers to the development of the country, especially in the fields of education and healthcare. Pope Francis praised the peaceful coexistence and mutual respect between the various religious groups in Cameroon. Before the meeting came to a conclusion, the Pope and the President also exchanged views on some themes of international interest, with particular reference to the current challenges affecting the region. On March the 25th, the 27 European heads of state and government gathered in Rome to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the signing of the Rome Treaties. This document is considered to be the first major step towards the creation of the European Union. On Friday, March the 24th, on the eve of the anniversary, Pope Francis received these heads of state and government in a private audience at the Vatican. The Holy Father addressed the group after speeches made by the Italian Prime Minister, Paolo Gentiloni, and the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani.
I convey to each of you the affection of the Holy See for your respective countries and for Europe itself, to whose future it is, in God's providence, inseparably linked.
The Vatican City is not a part of the European Union, but due to its geographical location, it's very closely linked to it. Citing the Founding Fathers, Pope Francis recalled that Europe is not a conglomeration of rules to obey or a manual of protocols and procedures to follow. It is a way of life, a way of understanding man, based on his transcendent and inalienable dignity.
At the origin of the idea of Europe, we find the nature and the responsibility of the human person, with his ferment of evangelical fraternity, with his desire for truth and justice, honored by a 1,000-year-old experience. Rome, with its vocation to universality, symbolizes that experience and was thus chosen as the place for the signing of the treaties.
About 72% of Europeans inside the Union profess the Christian faith. In his speech, Pope Francis recalled that at the origin of the European civilization lies Christianity, without which the Western values of dignity, freedom, and justice would be incomprehensible.
Europe finds new hope when man is the center and the heart of her institutions. I am convinced that this entails an attentive and trust-filled readiness to hear the expectations voiced by individuals, society, and the peoples who make up the Union.
Affirming the centrality of man, Pope Francis invited the European leaders to rediscover the spirit of family, in which every member is welcomed and respected.
Whereby each contributes freely to the common home in accordance with his or her own abilities and gifts. It helps to keep in mind that Europe is a family of peoples.
At the conclusion of his speech, Pope Francis compared the 60 years of the European Union with the 60 years of maturity of man. He said that unlike human beings, the European Union does not face an inevitable old age, but the possibility of a new youthfulness.
For my part, I readily assure you of the closeness of the Holy See and the Church to Europe as a whole, to whose growth she has and always will continue to contribute. Invoking upon Europe the Lord's blessings, I ask Him to protect her and grant her peace and progress.
The Treaties of Rome were the founding treaties that established the European Economic Community and the European Atomic Energy Community, and they were signed on March the 25th, 1957. These agreements have led to the longest period of peace in written history in Europe. An interesting fact is that the flag of the European Union has an exquisitely Marian symbolism. The flag, designed by the French Catholic Arsène Heitz, bears 12 stars and Marian colors. In the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation, it's written that a figure of a woman appeared on a blue sky, clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars upon her head. Whether intentionally or not, the EU flag has Marian symbolism, and the Catholic tradition has venerated the Virgin Mary as the Queen of Europe for at least 700 years. The entire continent was consecrated to Our Lady from the shrine in Gibraltar in the 14th century. Our Lady of Europe, pray for us. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. On Saturday, March the 25th, Pope Francis arrived in Milan in northern Italy for a one-day pastoral visit. The first stop on his schedule was the Forlanini district, an area located on the outskirts of the city. Here, in addition to traditionally Italian families, the Holy Father met with representatives of Roma and immigrant families, not only Christians, but also Muslims. Continuing his visit, Pope Francis reached the Cathedral of Milan, where he met with priests and consecrated persons, where he also laid flowers on the tomb of St. Charles Borromeo. Pope Francis listened to 3 questions posed by the consecrated people and offered his words of advice. One of the questions was about how to be a witness of the beauty of consecrated life in today's world, and what to do when numbers in religious communities seem to be waning.
I believe right here is what we need to pay attention to. That there are a few of us, yes. That we are in a minority, yes. That we are elderly, yes. But resigned, no.
Rassegnati, no.
The Holy Father also underscored that the congregations were born to be the salt and yeast of this world.
I don't believe that the Pope can tell you, concern yourselves with this or that. What the Pope must tell you is this: there are few of you, but the few of you there are, go to the peripheries of the world. Go to its boundaries and encounter the Lord there. to renew the mission of origins, to the Galilee of the first encounter. Return to the Galilee of the first encounter. And this will be good for all of us. It will make us grow. It will make us a multitude.
Moltitudine.
After the Angelus prayer and the solemn blessing from the stairs of the cathedral, Pope Francis went to visit the inmates at the San Vittore prison and joined them for lunch. This prison currently hosts about 900 inmates. Pope Francis met briefly with some of them and with a large group of the San Vittore staff and volunteers. After visiting the San Vittore prison, Pope Francis headed to the Park of Monza for a Holy Mass celebrating the Feast of the Annunciation. Between 700,000 and 1 million people filled the Park of Monza to hear the words of the Pope and participate in the Mass. Explaining the Gospel of the day, Pope Francis noted that the encounters between God and his people happened in places that normally we do not expect, on the edge, on the outskirts.
There they will make their appointment. There they will meet. There God will make himself flesh so as to walk together with us from the womb of his mother. It will no longer occur in a place reserved to the few, while the majority remains outside waiting. Nothing and no one will be indifferent to him. No situation will be deprived of his presence. The joy of salvation begins in the daily life of the house of a young girl from Nazareth.
At the end of his homily, Pope Francis paraphrased the words of St. Ambrose and said that God is continuing to look for hearts which are similar to the heart of the Virgin Mary, the hearts willing to believe even in very extraordinary circumstances. The final appointment of the day was a meeting with young people who have recently received the sacrament of confirmation. It took place at the Milanese soccer stadium, Piazza San Siro. This is a long-standing tradition of the Diocese of Milan. Each year, candidates for confirmation meet here with their Archbishop. Around 80,000 young people between the ages of 12 and 15, along with their parents, priests, and catechists, welcomed the Pope to the stadium. After different performances prepared by teenagers and the reading of the Gospel, Pope Francis answered questions posed by some of those present, and in his off-the-cuff answers, he focused on the importance of education. The Holy Father reminded teachers and parents that besides education, children also need to play, have fun, and rest. Before the event came to an end, the Holy Father made a strong appeal to combat the phenomenon of bullying.
I ask you in silence, in your schools and your neighborhoods, is there someone that you mock? Someone that you make fun of because they might look a little funny? Because they may be a little fat or too thin? Or because of any other reason? Think about it. Someone that you like to embarrass because of this. Think about this. This is called bullying. Please. No, I'm not finished yet. Please. Use the sacrament of confirmation and make the promise to the Lord to never do this and to never let it happen in your schools or in your neighborhoods. Understood?
Capito?
Pope Francis finished his visit around 7 p.m. local time and then headed back to Rome. There were an estimated 1.5 million people who participated in the events of the day in Milan, clearly showing the great love of the Italian people for Pope Francis.
Christianity and Islam especially are being maliciously politicized. This triggers unspeakable crimes and hate campaigns. The political mismanagement of globalization causes chaos across the globe, and equal citizenship rights are ignored by too many countries. At the UN in Geneva on March 15th, the Geneva Center for Human Rights Advancement and Global Dialogue, with the support of the permanent missions of Algeria, the Order of Malta, Pakistan and Lebanon, organized this side event.
We need to try to capture the high ground. That means trying to recall these two great ancient religions the teachings that both of us telling the same story of the creation of one humanity under one God.
Theme of the panel: Islam and Christianity, the Great Convergence, working jointly towards equal citizenship rights.
I think in the Middle East we are starting to learn what has happened to our young people. Some people are joining these groups because of misery, because of poverty, and some are joining because of their education has not been right.
Only states that are based on the rule of law, only states that ensure equal citizenship can guarantee that people live together in peace.
And to reach out to interfaith and interdialogue amongst the world, whereby we unify our values and we go back to the roots of understanding that this is the way to drive peace and prosperity and coexistence.
The objective was to promote equality in citizenship rights by validating religious diversity.
If we join our forces to promote equal citizenship rights, then perhaps we won't need to refer to minorities anymore. Religious minorities in particular will just become one of the features of diversity.
We, by definition, work with Muslims, with all other religions, and for us it is extremely important to contribute, let's say, to the understanding amongst Muslims and Christians and also other religions, of course.
Christianity and Islam represent nearly half of the world population and have a common starting point through their shared Abrahamic heritage.
And there are so many things where they can go together rather than dividing. I mean, so the role of religion is bringing people together. I mean, to create, that kind of peace and harmony between the followers, rather than dividing them. By some differences.
Contributing to interreligious dialogue is explicit in the Quran and also has been repeatedly reaffirmed by the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue.
And there is indeed a convergence of the language. There's a convergence of the holy books so dynamically that we're discovering that some of the so-called heresies, such as, is Jesus the Son of God? Is Allah the God of the Bible? The Trinity and all these forbidden concepts can actually be bridged, and they are what I would call deadly misunderstandings.
The primary outcome of this side event will be the adoption of an agenda for a world conference to be held on the same subject in the near future.
This is our task, to counteract, but also to show that the true faith has another phase. We have to live together.
I think, first of all, because we spoke with great honesty about the challenges we face, but also with great hope. And I think on occasions like this, we discover that we have much support to give each other. We encourage each other in a situation which some people think is hopeless. So I think it was a wonderful next step forward, and I'm very grateful to have been here.
Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. On March the 23rd, the Vatican Museums inaugurated a new exhibition dedicated to one of the most important saints of France. The first metropolitan bishop of ancient Gaul, Saint Caesarius of Arles. The exhibition is the result of the collaboration between the Vatican Museums and the French department of Bouches-du-Rhône. For French ambassador to the Holy See, Philippe Zeller, this has a special value. He says that art embraces a different dimension of diplomatic ties between France and the Holy See.
So that's first occasion to underline the fact that there are also relations on cultural fields, and not only on religious, which is clearly the priority, also relations state to state.
These precious relics of St. Caesarius and other contemporary evidence of ancient Christianity testify to the centuries-old dialogue between Rome and Arles, and their cultural development throughout history.
Is dedicated to somebody who played a very important role in the Paleo-Christianity, Saint Césaire, and we will feel his presence through the relics who will be showed at that occasion. The fact that, the Archbishop of Aix and Arles, one of the Bishops of Marseille, many clerics who are here, will also give their testimony of the role, the importance, still now, 1,500 years after, of this famous Saint Césaire, who played a really important role by easing the transition between the Roman Empire and the expansion of the Christianity in countries like France.
Saint Caesarius was born in the 5th century in ancient Gaul, an area which corresponded to modern-day southern France. Before becoming the Bishop of Arles, he lived a monastic life promoting the ideals of asceticism. He was a strong opponent of Arianism, and he presided over several synods where he insisted on the orthodoxy of the faith. Church tradition remembers him as a good pastor, protector of the poor and of captives. Alessandro Vella is one of the assistants working at the Department of Christian Antiquities at the Vatican Museums.
The main articles exhibited here are the relics of St. Cesarius, what we have left of him. Not the remains of his body, not the bones, for instance, which have been lost over the centuries. What we have are the objects he was buried with, as well as the objects which, in all likelihood, he used during his life.
On display, visitors can see a tunic worn by the saint, a belt with an ivory buckle, and his leather shoes. There are also 2 palliums belonging to the saint, one of which Pope Symmachus conferred on Caesarius when he visited Rome. Complementing the Provençal objects from Arles, on display are also some objects from the Vatican collections which date back to the same period of time. And the Vatican Library has exceptionally loaned a precious Carolingian codex from the 9th century, which contains the text of a letter that Pope Symmachus wrote to Caesarius in Latin. The letter starts with the words, Dilectissimo fratri Caesario Symmachus, which in English means, to my beloved brother, Caesarius.
Today, tonight to be exact, an agreement for future collaborations will be signed between the Museum of Arles and the Vatican Museums. And this exhibit is only the beginning.
The exhibition opened to the public on March the 24th and will run through June the 25th, shedding more light on the culture of Paleo-Christian Gaul and on the Christian roots of France. March the 27th marked the first anniversary of the death of EWTN foundress Mother Angelica. Remembering her in prayer in the Vatican, Archbishop Rino Fisichella, president of the Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization, celebrated this Mass in St. Peter's Basilica. EWTN and EWTN News Rome Bureau staff, ambassadors to the Holy See, Vatican officials, and communications professionals in Rome all participated, thanking God for the gift of her life and the continuing work of the Eternal Word television network. During his homily, Archbishop Fisichella said that at the center of Mother Angelica's life was her encounter with Jesus. It was precisely this encounter of faith that Mother wanted to communicate to the world.
She was, first of all, a woman of faith. And I am pleased to remember one sentence that touched me in a particular way. When Mother Angelica said, "My dear friends, faith is what gets you started. Hope is what keeps you going. Love is what brings you to the end." And probably we can take this last expression. Love is what brings you to the end. Love was her life.
Journalists, producers, photographers, videographers, and employees of the EWTN family all participated in this special Mass, Not all of them had met Mother Angelica personally, but they each share her desire to change this world by proclaiming the Word of God. Joan Lewis, EWTN's first Rome bureau chief, first met Mother Angelica on the day of her new appointment.
It was very moving for me because though she couldn't talk, she blessed my ears, my mouth, my hands, and my eyes, that I would use all of those to do what she had done for so many years, and that is to bring the word of the Lord, the teachings of the church, to the world.
WTN, like Mother Angelica told you many times, so do in the best that you can your work, because this is your vocation. So don't be afraid if you have some troubles, don't be afraid if you have some difficulties. Go ahead, because this is your vocation and this is your ministry for the church.
Today, 25 people are working for different EWTN branches in Rome. The multinational and multilingual team comes from the United States, Italy, Spain, Germany, England, and Kazakhstan. The office produces content for various EWTN programs and EWTN news sections. They include EWTN News Nightly, Catholic News Agency, Aci Stampa, Asi Prensa, also the National Catholic Register, and Church Pop. Mother Angelica, who passed away on Easter Sunday a year ago, continues to make an impact here in Rome.